When I was a little boy, I used to remember hearing very, very clearly my mom say, "Of course, I should worry about you. If I do not worry about you, then it means I don't care about you." And throughout my formative years, I just saw worrying as a sign of caring. And I think a lot of people will say that today, will say, actually, yeah, because I care about you, actually, that is why I worry about you. But we do know that there is a worrying that goes beyond just caring about somebody. The worrying that leads to anxiety, the worry that comes out of an anxious mind, and the worry that can be so debilitating that it actually stops you from being able to function or do all of the things that you were meant to do. And over this week, we are focusing on just anxiety and actually what can we do? Can we truly live in a world, or can we have a life that is free of anxiety? And one of the characters in the Bible that always amazes me is a young guy called Joseph. And Joseph will have, he had all of the things that happened in his life should, have made him a natural warrior, someone who was anxious, and someone also who maybe faced depression and also had an inward hatred towards people. And in some ways, he would have been almost justified by his action. But there's a statement that Joseph makes in the Bible, and I just want to read that statement. And he made this statement talking to his brothers, as he revealed himself to them. He said to them, "But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives." Now, that statement came out of a whole life story that had gone from bad to worse to horrible before it actually got any better. Joseph was a young man who had dreams, and as he shared his dream, his family around him kind of became very, very angry with him. Angry enough for his brothers to actually conspire to kill him, and later on, rather than killing him, to sell him into slavery. They must have had such a hatred and an annoyance towards him. Joseph must have been such an annoying little brother because he was the youngest. That they decided actually the best way to get rid of him was either to kill him, but eventually, rather than killing him, they sold him into slavery. Now, when when he was sold into slavery, he was taken to Egypt, and he then worked in a top official's house. Whilst he was in this house, the master realized that actually Joseph did good work, and whatever Joseph touched, he almost had the Midas touch. Whatever he touched turned to gold, and soon he put him in charge of his household. But soon the wife of his master actually liked Joseph and wanted Joseph to jump into bed with her. But Joseph refused all of that. And later on, he was falsely accused by the wife of trying to rape her. And this meant that Joseph was again kicked out of his master's house and found himself in prison. In prison, again, whatever Joseph touched kind of turned to gold. And soon he was in charge of stuff in prison, really doing well and helping others. And two gentlemen were brought into prison, and they had a dream that really troubled them. And Joseph ended up interpreting the dreams for them. And both of the dreams came exactly true. One of the prisoners was killed, and the other one was released back into service for Pharaoh. And as he was being released, Joseph said to him, "Please remember me, when you get out of prison, and kind of like, put in a good word for me and get me out of this mess that I am in." But soon, Joseph realized that even though he had been good to this guy, the days turned into weeks, the weeks turned into months, and the month turned into year, and he was completely forgotten. But still in prison, one day, suddenly there was a call for him that said Pharaoh wanted to see him. And this was years on. And when he comes before Pharaoh, Pharaoh says to him, "Well, I've had a dream, and nobody seemed to be able to understand the nature of the dream. I hear you're good at interpreting dreams. Would you be able to tell me what the dream was?" Joseph interprets the dream, and Pharaoh wisely looks at him and goes, well, actually, the fact that you can interpret the dream means you must be able to actually be in charge of the solution to this dream. And Joseph went in one day from being a jailbird to being prime minister of Egypt. The only person who was high above him was the king, who was Pharaoh. Such a amazing transformation. This is a man who have been abandoned by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, abandoned by his master, lied about by his master's wife, put in prison, befriended people, and the friends again had completely abandoned him and left him in prison. And yet, in the midst of all of this, his relationship with God was still intact. And when he was called upon, he was able to actually listen to God and hear. And from being a jailbird one day, the next day he comes out and he's prime minister. As the year rolls on, Joseph has become a really important man in Egypt, and the perfect opportunity for revenge came. His brothers who sold him into slavery are facing a tough time. They come to Egypt looking for food. Joseph immediately recognizes them. They don't recognize him. And through a series of events, they come to this place where Joseph now unveils himself, and actually he tells his brothers, I am the one who you sold into slavery. And it's that statement, as his brothers are shocked and aghast, thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to be completely annihilated because of what we have done. Joseph makes the statement. He says, but don't be upset and don't be angry with yourself for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve lives. I am intrigued to know what was the working of Joseph's inner mind. What sustained him through all of those years that did not allow him to end up with bitterness or anger, or also become a really, really anxious or worrying person. I think it was very, very simple. Joseph just simply focused on God. He knew that he hadn't done anything wrong. He knew that he had been falsely accused. And rather than actually thinking about all of the negative things, I think if we had the opportunity to encounter Joseph and speak to him, he would just say, you know what? I just focused on what was true, what was right, what was noble, what was trustworthy. I just thought about the things that were right rather than allowing the negativity to draw me down. Worrying and anxiety is a really, really complex thing, and there are a multitude of things that we need to do to be able to overcome it. But one of the stepping stones we can take in actually dealing with our anxiety and with our worry is simply changing our focus. And it's one of the many things we can do. And Joseph focused, he set his eyes on God and stayed focused on God. He viewed life from a God perspective. He viewed his relationship from a God perspective. And whilst he knew that things had happened to him from the outside, he made sure that he took responsibility for the inner workings of his own life. You see, my anger, my frustration, my annoyance, yes, it could be triggered by outside factors, but actually they still belong to me. And actually, if I allow those things to encroach within my heart, they can become a very, very destructive force within my life. Joseph understood that, and he stayed pure. Joseph is normally referred to as like the perfect reflection of Jesus Christ, because he was the one who basically seemed to do nothing wrong, even though so many wrong was done against him. As we journey through this season looking at anxiety, I think one of the simple things we can do is to learn to focus on the positives within us rather than allowing the negatives to take over. And I know as we do that, it can start becoming a process and a journey towards part of our healing. I hope God gives us the strength to be able to look at what is positive rather than what is negative. I pray that happens to all of us in Jesus' name. Thank you.